As with the sperm, if you're missing an egg carrier, you'll have full access to our egg donation bank, all gathered from top specimens. But if you do have an egg carrier, we'll pump that sucker full of hormones, so you can get as many eggs as possible in the shortest amount of time.
And then the true magic begins. Building a baby in a petri dish.
I'm Sos here for Rebel News. I am very happy to be joined by the founder and director of Choice for Two, Laura Klassen, the sort of author, director, mastermind behind a number of viral videos tackling issues, very often issues surrounding life and abortion issues, including the Magic Birth Canal video, a powerful video last year on child sacrifice, very often stunning, whether they be live action or animated, viral videos tackling issues in a new and interesting way. Laura, before we get into your most recent video, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this strategy you have of putting out these sort of viral videos in a different format. They're not necessarily just apologetics. They're not necessarily you just standing there making a point, but they sort of animate the issue and make it more interesting and captivating.
Yeah, that's the point right there. We're trying to make content that people will actually watch. And so just trying to do it in a very artistic and catchy way.
And so it's interesting because I know they've like refilmed or at least dubbed over some of your videos. They've gone international in other languages. Do you have like a rough estimate on how many people have been reached by your content over the years?
Oh my goodness. No, I have no idea. It is really cool to know that like other countries have actually recreated it and they've gotten their own actors, and it's amazing. I mean, no, I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm sure it's in the millions. I think I've seen a couple M's besides some of those videos. So certainly having an impact. Now, for this most recent video, most of your videos in the past have generally sort of tackled abortion issues, pro-life issues. The issue that you've tackled this time, though, it's a little bit different, and though I think it aligns very well with what we're talking about generally, the pro-life issue, you possibly received a bit of backlash on it, and that is the issue of IVF, or in vitro fertilization. So maybe for folks out there, first off, if they're unfamiliar with what IVF is, if you could just fill them in.
Sure. So yeah, in vitro fertilization is essentially when you're creating human life outside of the woman's body, usually in some sort of dish. And so they're taking sperm from a man and eggs from a woman, and combining them and then putting those embryos into a woman's womb to hopefully have that child grow. So that's what it is. And it is connected very close to abortion because so much abortion happens along the way, just within the process of IVF. And it's just another human rights issue for people who aren't born yet.
And so what is the basic grounds? I know you sort of touched on it there, but that you said abortions occur in the process effectively of IVF. That might be something people don't understand. So if you could just expand upon that. Sure.
So when the sperm and the egg are combined, and ideally with IVF, they create as many embryos as possible at one time. And they're continually evaluating them. And if there's any genetic imperfections or anything that's not perfect, then those ones are discarded, killed, given to science. And the other way that abortion plays into it is when multiples implant. And so maybe one embryo will be transferred and it will split, which is how you get twins. So that can happen. And you could either get triplets or you could get more. Other times they'll implant or they'll transfer more than one embryo, hoping that one will stick, but sometimes more than one, which is how you get to situations like with Octomom having 8 children at once. And so anyway, if there are multiples, it's like standard practice to abort any more than 1 or 2.
And that's what they'd refer to as like selective reduction politically?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Okay. So talk a little bit then about the actual video. We probably have already run a little bit of a clip of it, but talk about sort of how this video tackles this issue.
Yeah, so we made it as though it's a commercial for a new IVF company. And I'm sad to say a lot of it is very close to what's actually on some IVF websites. Like when I was reading their site, I was like, is this satire? And that's what gave me the idea, because it's so weird. It's like a mad scientist situation. Yeah. So that is kind of the thinking behind, that's how the video came to be, I should say.
And did I read that, like obviously some of this you're talking about, like basically gene editing, selecting what kind of baby you want, reducing extra babies that don't sort of meet your perfect criteria. I mean, this sounds like eugenics to me. But did you actually have, I think you said on social media, some people thinking this was real and being interested in it?
Yeah. So yes, before we released it on Choice for Two, the week before, we set up fake social media, Build a Baby. We made it look like it was a real company. We had a website, and we got interested customers using words like "I would like to order," and they would even say what race of child they were looking for. And it was, I thought it was pretty clear that our video was satire, but it's kind of funny/sad to see some people actually think it's real, and we're still getting emails through the website with interested potential customers.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, it's a narrow gap between fact and fiction these days. Now, even among people who are sort of ardent pro-lifers, or at least purported pro-lifers, who are anti-abortion, you mentioned that you've received some backlash, and even some donors have stopped contributing because you've tackled that issue. Is that right?
Yes. And I fully anticipated that happening because a lot of pro-life people think that IVF is pro-life. They see abortion as destroying life. They see IVF as the overall intention to create life. They're just maybe not aware of the fact that IVF actually destroys a lot more than it creates. So the pro-life people, a lot have been upset because they've done it themselves. And it's awkward now to be confronted kind of with this information that you might have, well, you did contribute to the death of tiny people.
Well, I think it is good that you are bringing this issue forward in this sort of strategy that you deploy in society. I know I'm Catholic, so very often Catholics are people who are speaking out against this, and they can often get a tough ride, whether it be from other Protestant denominations or from agnostic groups, whatever it may be. So I think having multiple people speak to this is important. And like you said, most people probably don't know. There's just the optics of, oh, well, this is how life is made, so that's considered a positive. Tackling the tough, difficult parts about this is not quite so enjoyable. But if you'll permit me to sort of bat from their side, play devil's advocate for a moment, what is your sort of response to maybe parents who already have in vitro kids, or parents who can't conceive, are struggling, and they view in vitro as the only way to have kids?
Right. Well, to people who already have kids, like, great. I'm happy for you. I'm happy that you have children. I'm happy your child is here and your child is just as worthy as any other child. But IVF is evil and it should be abolished is what I think moving forward. For people who are right now facing fertility issues, it's hard. It is heartbreaking. And people have been kind of offered this great medical solution to that problem. But there are other things you can do. You can go and find doctors who will actually work with you to treat the problem that's causing you to be infertile. You do have options, and also adoption. Adoption is an amazing option. That's a way for you to build your family, and there are children who need families. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. And finally, I think that the need to tackle hard issues, even if they are difficult to address, to tackle injustice remains. Obviously, for many people, talking about abortion can be uncomfortable, but as you spread that information and as you make people aware of those issues, they can come on side with that. Is the reason you're tackling in vitro because it is an injustice out there, and even though some of your supporters, some of your friends, people you know may be on side with this, it is an injustice that needs to be decried?
Exactly. But I also noticed that in vitro is actually stopping many Christians from getting involved in the abortion fight, because they'll say for abortion, life begins at conception, or fertilization. But then when it comes to IVF, all of a sudden they're backing off because that makes things really awkward. So I just wanted to kind of throw it out there and say, look, IVF was presented as this amazing medical fix, but it's not, because it's killing human beings. And if you believe life begins at fertilization, you cannot support it.
So if folks want to check out this full video, we'll include a link obviously in our copy, and we'll have some segments of it throughout this interview. But where can people check out the full video, and where can people learn more about the work you're doing?
Sure. Our website is choice42.com. It's written choice42.com. And you can find our video on there or on any of our social media pages.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time and for your continued advocacy fighting these important battles. Laura Klassen of Choice for Two. And as always, for everyone at home, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Sos.
Would you like to bring our new documentary, Church Under Fire, Canada's War on Christianity, to your church or group? Our documentary tells the story of the authoritarian attacks on places of worship under the guise of public health during COVID. It documents the congregations and pastors who stood up to government overreach and paid the price for it. Now, the documentary isn't just an historical record of what happened. It explains how and why the groundwork was laid years in advance. Now, we want as many people as possible to see this documentary so that while we may forgive, we may never forget what happened. And that's why we have a special licensing option for you to bring the documentary to your church. If you're a pastor, reach out to us at savethechristians.com. You'll find a special licensing tab there. And if you're a congregant, let your church leadership know that this documentary exists and that you can have it shown in your own church. And lastly, if you know of a venue or theater who would host a screening, you can make that happen by visiting savethechristians.com. And thank you to everybody who supported and who continues to support this very important work. We could not do any of this without you. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid.